Film and Whiskey Nation, do you ever think about awards? Of course you do. You drink whiskey and watch movies, which means that you know that nothing is validated until a group of random people say, hey, we love what you're doing. The awesome thing about Doc Swinson's whiskey is that it isn't just some group of schlubs that are giving them awards. They have been winning attention from some of the most important whiskey experts that you can imagine. They've been voted best distillery in Washington State by the New York International Spirits Competition. They've been voted the best independent bottler by the Ascot Awards, as well as the best finished bourbon from the Ascot Awards for their La Menta Exploratory Cask. Their Exploratory Cask series is where they release some of the most fascinating and adventurous experiments. If you're ever checking out Doc's lineup and see a white label, there's a really good chance that that's the only time you'll see that bottle, so make sure you snatch it up. Doc Swinson's has been offering just phenomenal finished and blended whiskeys for quite some time now. You can find them online at docswhiskey.com. That's DOCS whiskey.com.
Hey everybody, welcome into the Film and Whiskey Podcast. I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
Brad, do you know what day it is today?
Bro, I am so excited.
It's Cruisemas!
Cruisemas!
Merry Cruisemas to you, sir.
Dude, Merry Cruisemas to you.
Listen, we've been doing Hanksgiving for the last 3 years, and we finished Hanksgiving and said, man, this is so much fun every year. What other holidays can we do? And of course, the first thing we thought of was Brad's favorite actor of all time, Tom Cruise.
Easily.
And just attaching it to Christmas.
Yeah, it seemed pretty obvious. I texted you a few days later and had a few more ideas about possibly Meryl Streepster.
In place of Easter? Is that what that is?
In place of Easter. The 4th of Junai.
Okay.
As in Bill Nighy.
Yeah, I like it.
Even though he is
it.
British and probably doesn't celebrate the 4th of July.
Probably not so much. What else we got?
Oh man. There was a Halloween one. What was my Halloween one?
Oh, let's look at your text. Oh, Tom Holland Ween.
There we go. Tom Holland Ween.
I responded with Halloween McKellen.
I would be a big fan of that.
And I took your Meryl Streep one and I turned it into Memorial Day. For Memorial Day.
I love it, man.
In honor of the fallen, we watch Meryl Streep every year. Oh, man. All right. So as you can tell, this is our first Cruisemas episode. We are happy that you've joined us. We're going to be talking about the year's biggest movie as of right now. Who knows if Avatar will overtake it. But as of now, Top Gun Maverick is the top movie of 2022. Well, how could we start? Yeah, how could we start Cruisemas with any movie besides that?
Yeah, it feels like this triumphant return for Tom, even though he's gone nowhere. Like, he continues to pump out awesome, incredible movies. When we went to see Maverick, my wife and I, they were showing the trailer for the new Mission Impossible. Mm-hmm. And I just, it literally finished. And I was like, all right, babe, we can go now. That's all I needed to see.
Did you see the video they just posted like yesterday?
No, I didn't.
There's a new 9-minute video from the makers of Mission Impossible of Tom Cruise doing the biggest stunt in the next movie and how they set it up. It is a Christmas gift to us all, Brad.
Oh man, I don't even know if I want to watch it until after I've seen the movie. I'm just so giddy.
Well, we have plenty to talk about today. And before we get into talking about Top Gun Maverick, we do want to say, hey, if you're new to the podcast, welcome in. We would love it if you would rate and subscribe. Give us 5 stars, please. We don't want those 1-star reviews. But what we'd also like is if you could check out our Patreon, patreon.com/filmwhiskey, where you can support the podcast at 3 different tiers. We've got a $3, a $5, and a $7 a month tier. At each one of those tiers, you get a ton of bonus perks and content. At the $7 a month tier, we're just giving you whole episodes just for you. We're giving you uncensored stuff. We say lots of words that we don't usually say on this podcast. So yeah, think about joining us on patreon.com/filmwhiskey. Brad, I think what we should do today is just use our normal reviewing format and just do a condensed version because we have 3 whiskeys to drink today.
Yeah, we do. We are checking out the Bardstown Bourbon Company. If we could have a drum roll, I would ask for it. Their Origin series.
Yes, dude. I am super excited.
I am so freaking jacked. Bardstown has been incredibly kind to the Film and Whiskey podcast over the years. We went to a really cool, weird, white t-shirt party there a few months back at the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. I mean, they just put on some of the coolest stuff, and I'm just so excited for them to put out their very own distillate.
Well, because we have 3 of those to review, we got to kind of rush through Cruisemas here a little bit. Let's talk about Top Gun Maverick. This movie is in some ways the biggest triumph of Tom Cruise's career. It is a movie that has been in development since like the early 2010s in earnest. The director of the original film, Tony Scott, was attached and they were developing ideas for it. It got kind of kicked to, they put it on the back burner a bit, and then Tony Scott died tragically, and they really put the brakes on this for a long period of time. It got kind of picked back up again around 2015, 2016. They started doing different revisions and bringing in new writers and looking for directors, and of course, Tom Cruise is kind of guiding this whole thing. It was supposed to come out, I believe, in 2019. Like the first trailer for this came out in like 2018 and they decided to hold it, I think, for an early 2020 release. And then the pandemic happened and it sat on a shelf. And there was a bidding war for the rights to stream this during the pandemic because everybody was desperate for something to bring in some revenue. And Tom Cruise, being the guy that he is, said, absolutely not. We will not sell this movie to streamers. Like, this is going to be the movie that saves cinema. And the crazy thing about it is that he was right. Like this
100% right.
This is a James Cameron level ballsy move and it paid off in spades for my man.
I mean, it literally is Tom Cruise living out every single movie he made in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Of him like betting against the world that what he had to offer was greater than anybody realized. And he was 100% right. 100%. And he made just the most kick-ass movie of the 21st century. Like, this movie just rocks, bro.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the first Top Gun to set the stage here. Brad, have you seen the first Top Gun from '86? And if so, how recently did you check it out?
I actually just watched it. Well, at this point, probably like 8 to 10 months ago. Because I watched it maybe a few months before I saw Maverick.
Same for me. I had never seen Top Gun. And the thing is, like, you grow up hearing about Top Gun and how 80s it is and the shirtless volleyball and like the homoerotic subtexts and the cheesy synthesizers.
All right, Quentin Tarantino.
Right. The cheesy synthesizers. And, I'm thinking like, oh, this is just going to be, an advertisement for the Navy and for how cool are the 80s. And I watched it and I was like, oh, I forgot Tony Scott makes really freaking good movies. That movie was thrilling. Like, yes, it had some of those elements to it, but I didn't find it to be as overbearing as some other 80s movies that we've watched for this podcast.
Wait a second. So you had not actually seen it until like just a few months before Maverick?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I had seen it probably a decade ago when I, getting out of college area. So I'd seen it a while back and I remember enjoying it, thinking like, oh, this is pretty solid. And watching it again right before I went to see Maverick, I was like, oh man, if they're able to pull off a 2022 version of this could be pretty daggone incredible.
Yeah, that's the thing. People don't remember Top Gun. Incredible movie. Really, really good movie. And then they do this and they just one up themselves.
Yeah.
And I guess where I'd like to really jump in here, Brad, is I've heard a lot of people talk about this movie and say, this is how you do a sequel. And I'd really like to parse out what does that mean in the context of this movie? Because there are those little callbacks to the first movie. There's even the really obvious, like, wink, wink callbacks to the first movie. I don't know if they all work 100% perfectly, but I think what a lot of people are trying to get at here is that the characters in this movie are reckoning with the decisions they made in the first movie. And so there's conversation with the first movie while not being like 100% indebted to the first movie. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, 100%. I think that the really neat thing about what they do with the script in this is that the characters of the film, yes, they're in conversation with the activities and actions taken by themselves or their parents in the first film, and yet the mission still comes first. And I think that they do such a masterful job of pairing together the drive, the thing that is pushing them forward and forcing them to be the best of the best, which is, this mission they have to accomplish, with a lot of really important and just well-written dialogue about who these people are, and you get to see some good character development. But all of it has the feel of the original Top Gun, which is that of like competition and pushing yourself and striving to be the absolute best. And they do it in just an incredible way. And I think the thing that really puts it over the top is the fact that they're not just trying to be the best at shooting pool. They're trying to be the best at maneuvering some of the most expensive things humans have ever created that go really fast and look really cool.
And the great thing about it is like all of the military superiors remind them of that fact frequently. Mm-hmm. They're always like, yeah, you put yourself at risk, but you also put this $50 million piece of machinery at risk. And it's like,
all right, John Hammond.
Right, thanks. Yeah. All right, let's dive in a little bit on, I guess, the plot of the movie. And usually what we do is something called Brad Explains, where you break down the plot of the film in 60 seconds or less. But since we are going speed round today, I think we should do 30 seconds or less for Top Gun Maverick.
30 seconds.
You get 30
Holy
seconds
cow.
to explain this movie. I gave you no warning about it. And go.
Tom Cruise is an experimental pilot, and then he isn't, and he's teaching young pilots on how to do this crazy stunt. One of the pilots is Goose's son, and he's angry at him, but they have to work through their differences to defeat the bad guys. And then there's a little Mission Impossible sequence, and they steal an F-16 from the 80s and escape.
It's actually an F-14, I think.
Oh, yeah. F-14,
Yeah,
sorry.
You still failed. But that was only 20 seconds, so nice job, sir.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You did leave out the entire subplot of Maverick finally finding love.
That's true.
But
is that really...
Is that what we go to the theater for?
Is that what... I mean, I listen, if that is almost, it's like, what, 2.5 hours? It's a pretty long movie.
Yeah, it's like, 2:15, something like that, 2:20.
2:20 and 20 seconds. Yeah,
you
I'll
did
take
okay. All right. I went to see this movie in the theater for a third time the other day in preparation for this episode because they re-released it at Christmas time, just hoping to squeeze a little more money out of this thing. It has incredible legs. I mean, it came out in like April. So then it got April or May, and it got the Memorial Day bump. It got the Father's Day bump. And then it just kept stretching and stretching. It got the Labor Day bump. Like it was just incredible how long this thing played in theaters. And one of our best friends, Mike Giles, still had not seen this movie. I've been trying to get him to go see it for forever.
Michael.
And I'm like, Mike, it's dudes flying planes. Like, what more motivation do you need to go see this movie? I'll tell you what I was really looking for was this. After the second time I saw this movie in theaters, I started to get a little bit like pretentious and like film critic-y about it. And I was like, okay, the script is kind of bad. And a lot of the dialogue is like, Maverick, you used to be the best. And Maverick being like, well, I ain't done yet. Like, there's just a lot of that kind of stuff going on in here. And I'm like, this is really bad dialogue. I really like this movie, but can I really be 100% on the like, whoa, Top Gun Maverick's the best ever? And I have to admit, I was wavering. And I went to go see Avatar, The Way of Water. And I'm like, Jim Cameron, you've done it again. Like, this is a really good movie. Let's go try Top Gun for a third time and see what's going on. And I got to say, dude, Top Gun Maverick is a better movie than Avatar, The Way of Water. And
let's go.
It is one of the best action movies I've ever seen. I just paid attention this time to the editing and like the sheer volume of what they had to stitch together in some of these sequences is staggering. I don't know how they got so much footage for some of these like in-flight aerial sequences. It's incredible, man. This movie it's not just, oh, this is a cool movie. This is a fun movie. this is a real feat of filmmaking, the type of which we only see once in a generation, I think.
Yeah. What Tom is able to do with the camera to create this experience.
Tom didn't direct the movie.
Tom 100% directed this movie, Bob.
Like everyone in the credits is just an alias for Tom Cruise.
I wouldn't put it past him.
Jennifer Connelly, actually just Tom Cruise with a wig.
Okay. What they are able to do with the cameras in this movie to give you the experience of being a fighter pilot is beyond reckoning.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't know how you're able to do it so seamlessly and just give you the utter exhilaration of being a fighter pilot.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason I call Tom out specifically is because he has such a desire to truly immerse people into action. And I know how deeply he works with the directors and with the editors and how involved he was, especially in this movie that, you know, like you said, he's been working on for over a decade at this point.
Yeah, man. And I feel like to some extent, there's not much we can say about the making of this movie. Like people kind of pride themselves on knowing some of the backstory here. The way that they fitted out these fighter jets with cameras so that the actors could sit in the back seat and the pilot in the front seat, but it looked like the actors were flying the planes, but they really were in the planes and they would go up for hours at a time. And the actors would kind of be responsible for filming themselves. They had to learn cinematography techniques and editing techniques to be able to capture their own takes of what was going on as they were up in the air for a couple hours. And I mean, it's an incredible collaborative effort, but it's also like, this is Tom Cruise's movie, like from front to back, and not just as an actor, but this is really, like I said, this is his crowning achievement in terms of having his fingerprints on every part of this movie.
Yeah, and what an honor for all of these young actors. You know, like Miles Teller is a star in his own right by now, but for all the rest of them, like, can you imagine working with Tom Cruise on this movie? How awesome that would be. Like, there's not a lot of movies that have this much of an ensemble cast where there's such an obvious difference between the lower echelon actors and one of the greatest stars of all time.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about those actors and let's go to performances here. I think maybe we should start with those younger, you know, the people in the academy here, in Top Gun Academy. And like, I don't know that we need to go through each and every one of them. I am a big fan of Bob. Bob is my guy. My favorite scene in this watch through is when they're all playing, like, what is it called? Like fighter pilot football or whatever on the beach. And playing offense and defense at the same time. And that scene ends with everyone lifting up Bob and chanting, Bob, Bob. And I was like, yeah, this is my dream. This is exactly what my dream is being carried off a beach by fighter pilots who are chanting my name.
And you're just slathered in like sunscreen.
Yeah, you know, like, why not? I think Bob does a great job. I think, like, honestly, I think they all do a really good job. The two people that you really need to focus in on are Miles Teller as Rooster and Glenn Powell as Hangman. And Glenn Powell is a superstar in the making. Like, that guy just has the face and the jawline of a guy that's like destined for superstardom.
Of a future Tom Cruise.
Yeah, like 100%. And the thing is, like, he's the cocky asshole in this movie. He is the Maverick of this movie. That's the thing, is that, like, Rooster is the Iceman in a lot of ways. And, like, Iceman had his own swagger in the first one. But Ice was known for being cool under pressure and for not springing into action all the time. And Tom Cruise's character, Maverick, was known for being the hothead and not caring about, you know, putting everybody else in danger. And now you see that dynamic flipped where it's like, oh, no, Hangman, the Maverick of this movie, is kind of the bad guy. He's the dick. And
he's the worst.
And Glenn Powell plays it so well because it's not simply a one-dimensional 80s, you know, villain where like your family came to the ski resort and this guy's like, I can ski faster than you. Like, it's not like that. He truly does have a point with telling Rooster, like, you can't be as cautious as you are. And they play this really wonderful yin yang with each other. And I gotta say, man, like Miles Teller might be at this stage of his career the better actor than Glenn Powell, but Rooster's also a much more complicated and layered character. And so in every scene, Miles Teller has a lot more to do, and Glenn Powell gets like one line and it's kind of dickish. And it's amazing how much your eyes are drawn to Glenn Powell. Like he just has a commanding screen presence for someone who is like, you know, the fourth, fifth most important character in this movie.
Yeah, he has a way of commanding the attention of the viewer just with his physicality and his presence. And you don't want to like him, but you can't help but understand his point of view and what he's trying to tell Rooster throughout the film. And I'm with you 100% on Glenn Powell in this.
I've been a big Miles Teller fan for a long time now, probably since he was in a movie called The Spectacular Now back in 2013. And then Whiplash happened, and I was like, yeah, I'm on board for whatever this kid wants to do.
Dude, Whiplash is such a good movie.
I remember reading a profile of Miles Teller that I think it was in GQ back in about 2015 or so, and he seemed like just the most full of himself person ever. And I was like, oh, that's a bummer. And I don't know if life has kind of leveled him out a little bit, but I'm ready for the Teller sans here. Like I'm ready for him to like finally come into his own and take off as a movie star, because I think that he has the ability to be a star, and he also has the acting chops to be a really good actor along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you, dude. Ever since I saw him in Whiplash, I have been just a fan of anything that he does. And I'm with you. I think the real question to ask about Miles Teller is mustache.
Yeah.
Yay or nay?
I'm going to say yay. It is a bit wispy, but he pulls it off. And he pulls it like, I know for a fact I cannot pull off a mustache. It takes a very particular kind of man to pull off a mustache. I think, it helps that all these dudes are jacked.
Yeah.
So it doesn't look accidental. You know what I mean? Like you can tell that they're taking care of themselves. So the mustache is clearly on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If Miles Teller was like 50 pounds overweight and tried that mustache, it'd be like, oh, okay, you've just stopped
can't
trying.
grow a beard.
Yeah, right. I don't know. How about you? Mustache?
I think I'm nay on the mustache. There are not many mustachoid men out there that I would approve of.
Okay. I'm glad that we settled that. Let's talk a little bit about, I don't know, the rest of the military people. Ed Harris shows up for a couple minutes, and he's great because he's Ed Harris. I actually want to focus in on a scene with Ed Harris maybe in the second half here. It's like the thesis statement of the movie. But he's gone after about 10 minutes, and he's replaced by John Hamm, who, once again, I don't know what it is with John Hamm and me, but like, I never 100% buy what John Hamm is doing. I just don't know what it is. I really like him, and I think he's a good actor, but it's just like not always believable for me. And even here, he's like, I buy him as a guy who dislikes Maverick. I don't buy him as a high-ranking official in the U.S. Navy.
Have you watched all of Mad Men?
I watched the first full season of Mad Men and select episodes following that.
Okay, so like
he's great.
I watched
great
the
in
whole
Mad Men.
show.
Yeah,
and he's incredible. I think that role just fits him so perfectly that I don't know if it's, he acted his way into a corner for himself, like talent-wise, or if it just seems to be his bit that he's slightly reserved and like has a secret all the time. And like that was his big thing in Mad Men. And I just think that it carries over into every single role he takes. And it doesn't fit every role, but that's kind of who he is now. And so I don't think it's necessarily that he's Don Draper. I think it's just that he was that character for so long that he always holds something back from his roles.
Do you know what I think it is? I think that he tries to find an edge to his characters that I don't know if he's truly capable of conveying. And I think what he's going for is what Bradley Cooper actually does really well. I was listening to a podcast the other day. I was talking about how, like, when Bradley Cooper did Silver Linings Playbook, the director of that movie basically was like, I saw before anybody else that what Bradley Cooper's best trait is his ability to be driven by anger. And in every character he's played since then, he's a character that's driven by anger. Like even in Licorice Pizza, it's funny, but like he just blows up at people. And, you know, that's what's so great about his performance in American Sniper. It's like a very calm, chaotic build inside his head, but he's driven by anger. And I think that with Jon Hamm, he's trying to do the Bradley Cooper, but he just doesn't quite get there. And it makes me wonder now, like, how would Bradley Cooper be in this role? So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all fascinating stuff, but I want to drink some whiskey. So how about we get into this Bardstown Bourbon Company origin series?
That sounds good to me. We'll come back. We'll talk about Jennifer Connelly and Tom Cruise, but let's drink some whiskey. All right, today we are trying Bardstown's Origin series. Now, again, Brad alluded to this, but this is the first release from Bardstown that is made solely of their own distillate. And we've got 3 incredible expressions here. The first one we're going to try is the Origin series Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. It's 6 years old. It's a high rye bourbon mash bill. There's 36% rye in the mash bill, and they're releasing it at 96 proof. They have like a whole list of reasons they want to release it at 96 proof, but we're going to take them at their word that they say that this just happened to be the one that tested best. And I'm excited to try it, man. Let's give it a nose and a taste and give our thoughts on this 96 proofer.
Oh man, Bob, that is really nice.
It's really bright on the nose. There's a lot of like orange.
I was literally just gonna say orange and like almost like a grapefruit kind of citrusy. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot.
All right, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about the flavor, because I have thoughts. The only one of these 3 that I had tried prior to tonight was the second one that we're going to try, which is the 100 proofer, which I loved. This one is very different because the 100 proofer is a wheated mash bill. This is a high rye. You're a rye guy. What do you think of this one?
I was going to say it gets a little bit minty throughout. There's a little bit of that rye spice coming through. For me, it's a little bit creamy. I really like what they have going on here.
Yeah, it's not a very sweet bourbon. Like, it definitely goes more oak heavy, and it's not grainy, but like the spice is there. The black pepper is there, and it does have some of those kind of minty rye notes to it, Brad. You're absolutely right. I think subsequent sips prepared me for that better. But I'm going to go ahead and go on record and say the 96 proof actually was the perfect proof to release this. This thing packs a punch at 96 proof. It gave me a heck of a Kentucky hug on the way down. I'm really impressed with this, even if it's not necessarily my preferred flavor wheelhouse.
Yeah, dude, I am a huge fan of this. It's got some really nice oakiness, almost gets into some like Christmas spices on the finish. A little bit of molasses kind of a feel, almost like a gingerbread cookie. I really like this bourbon a lot, man.
All right, we're going to move into what I think will be my favorite one on the day. Like I said, the only one I've tried so far. This is their 100 proof bottled in bond. It is a wheated mash bill featuring 20% wheat. It's a 6-year-old bourbon coming in at 100 proof. Brad, what are you picking up on the nose on this one?
Man, this one gets a little bit sweeter. It's got vanilla. It's got caramel. It almost gets a little bit into like a fruity, like juicy peach type of feel. I really like this nose, Bob.
It reminds me of like a pineapple upside down cake, but if you swapped the pineapple out for peaches. It's like, it's caramely, it's bready, but it's definitely got that layer of vanilla. There's some maple going on here. It almost tips into like Knob Creek territory for me. I have a Knob Creek single barrel that I'm really liking right now, and it's almost into that like nuttiness, but not quite there. It's more of like a freshly baked bread or cake to go along with that wonderful note of peach you were picking up. I'm going to give it a sip. I'm assuming you're already sipping on it. So give us your notes, Brad.
Yeah, it stays in that kind of stone fruit peach feel. It gets a little bit caramely, but literally to the point of almost being like a toffee. Like there's a chocolatey feel to this. It's smooth and velvety. Bob, Bardstown Bourbon Company makes good whiskey.
This is damn
Who
good.
would've thought?
This is really good. Brad, I just love wheated bourbon. It's just my favorite kind of whiskey. Like, everything I love about bourbon is here in this. It's really decadent, really sweet, waves of caramel, waves of vanilla. I will say, right when I went to swallow, that same thing happened that happened on the first one. This one almost gets a little bit tannic to me. Like, it made my mouth pucker a little bit, and it kind of dried out my tongue a little bit. It's not just oaky, but it's almost tannic, and it turns slightly bitter. That's the only note that I can give on this that I don't really care for. But overall, I mean, this is like right in the wheelhouse. If you like Weller, you're going to love this. If you like Rebel Yell, you're going to love this. Really, really good stuff here.
Yeah. And then, honestly, if I can move into the rye, Bob, this is some damn good rye whiskey.
All right, so this one is also clocking in at 96 proof. I have not tried it yet. Brad, I'll allow you to sway me as I give it a nosing note.
Gosh. This has all sorts of like really fresh cherry going on. I think it gets into a little bit of spiciness right on the nose. It gets into some cinnamon, some clove. I love this nose.
Yeah, it's definitely rye forward. This smells like almost like unbaked rye bread dough. There's some dill on it for me. It's almost in that like more sour rye as opposed to the minty rye. I really like it though. I'm excited to see if it has sweetness to it or if it stays in that like really grain forward kind of palate.
No, for me, as I get into the palate, it has all of the rye punch up front, and then it sits on your palate for a little bit and almost turns into like a really soft vanilla, almost like a shortbread cookie for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the finish on this has a little bit of spiciness, but it finishes with all sorts of really nice, soft, sweet notes. It's vanilla, it's caramel. It almost turns nutty for me a tiny bit, almost like an almond. I think this is an incredible rye. Usually when I go nuts for a rye, it's because it starts off a little bit sweet and then gets spicy. This one for me starts off spicy and moves into those sweeter areas, and I'm a huge fan.
I do think this is the thinnest mouthfeel of the three. Like, it's a little bit thinner for me. And I think it almost drinks like almost like an 80 proof bourbon. Like, there's a little bit of sweetness there. It's kind of oaky. It reminds me of like some of the lower proof Buffalo Trace offerings, like a benchmark, but definitely more on the rye side of things. It's really pleasant and I think inoffensive. And it might just be because I'm not as big of a rye drinker as Brad is. But for me, if I had to rank these from 1 to 3, I think I would go 100 proof bourbon, 96 proof bourbon, and then this rye.
Yeah, I think I would go rye just a little bit above the Bottled and Bond, and then their regular bourbon.
Oh, the second sip of that rye. Bro,
Dude,
I might be on board
I'm telling
now.
you, man.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, man. It's a damn good rye.
That got really good all of a sudden. Oh, yeah. Okay. The rye's number 2. Actually, the rye might be number 1. This is slowly creeping up here.
Bob, I'm telling you, man, you sit with it for long enough. There's just so much complexity there, man.
Yeah. Wow. And I was comparing it to Benchmark a minute ago. Shame on me.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Wow. All right. So I guess what we're saying here is that all 3 of these are really good, and all 3 of these could be our favorite on any day of the week. And that's kind of par for the course with Bardstown Bourbon Company. We really love what they're doing. We always have. I'm super pumped that they're finally releasing their own distillate, not blended with anything else, and they can hang their hat on these 3 expressions. I think if you can find any of these on the shelf, they're definitely all worth picking up. I would give a wholehearted recommendation to the Bottled and Bond and to the rye.
Yeah, 100%. This rye is incredible. And the Bottled and Bond and their regular bourbon are both nothing to sneeze at either. So get yourself some Origin Series Bardstown Bourbon Company, guys.
Well, Brad, are you ready to return to the danger zone?
Dude, I was born ready.
All right, that was the Origin Series from Bardstown Bourbon Company. We are freaking pumped about that. We are also pumped about Cruisemas. Merry Cruisemas.
Are you ready for 2 facts and a falsehood, Bob?
Oh, did you prepare 2 facts and a falsehood for Cruisemas?
Fact number 1.
Oh my gosh.
Tom Cruise is awesome. Fact number 2. Tom Cruise may be one of the greatest movie actors of all time. Fact number 3. Tom Cruise blows the big one.
I guess I'll say 3.
That is the falsehood.
Yeah,
Good job, Bob.
I did it. Let's talk about the last two big names in this movie. Jennifer Connelly as Penny and Tom Cruise as Maverick. Jennifer Connelly does a very commendable job here because her character is ridiculous. She is a single mom.
What are you talking about, Bob?
She's a single mom who owns the nicest bar in that area of the country, and she apparently works it by herself on a Friday night, serving 400 guests at a time. She is a supermodel. She rocks the hell out of a pair of jeans. I mean, just an absolute smoke show, if we're being honest, Brad. Like,
yeah,
she's great. She's also not a real human being. And I think Jennifer Connelly does the absolute utmost she can with one of the most ridiculous characters I've ever seen.
I love Jennifer Connelly, man.
Dude, ever since A Beautiful Mind, like...
Exactly.
That was, well, maybe dating myself here. She obviously has been famous for much longer than A Beautiful Mind, but like, I remember seeing A Beautiful Mind in theaters when I was like, I just turned 11. And I was like, who is that lady? Because she is real pretty. And that's what hooked me. And then I watched her performance and she wins an Oscar for it. Like, she's so good in that movie. And I'm so happy to see that she is like back on top of people's minds again because she's great.
Yeah, I really love Jennifer Connelly in this. I think that she's a perfect counterpart for Tom Cruise at this stage of his career in that she is so self-confident. She knows what she wants to do as an actress, that with everybody else in this film being really young and, you know, not just in the shadow of Maverick, but also in the shadow of Tom Cruise, I think you really needed somebody like Jennifer Connelly to play this. I mean, I don't know about second lead, third lead, whatever you want to call it, but she plays opposite of Tom incredibly well and holds her own.
Yeah, I mean, I was listening to a review of this and they were talking about how Tom Cruise hasn't really had a believable love interest in a movie for like 20 years. And a lot of that is just that Tom Cruise's characters have become very sexless characters. Like, he's just the guy who jumps off buildings instead of the guy who woos a woman. And I mean, it's kind of true. This is the first time that you really get to see intimacy in a Tom Cruise movie in a long, long time. And it's not like sex. It's just that, like, really that sex scene in this movie is Tom Cruise is shirtless and you see him lay her down on a bed. And then you just see them like giggling for a while. And then they're talking about deep stuff. And once again, I think that it's a credit to the movie that its chief concern is showing the maturity of Maverick, showing how Maverick grows up, even though he's in his 50s, right? That this is the kind of relationship that two mature adults should have. And I really, really loved that. I think it was a great touch. Like, I don't know if it's just something weird within Scientology that Tom Cruise doesn't do sex scenes or whatever, but like in this instance, the very chaste nature of their relationship, I think actually thematically helped what they were trying to do in the movie.
Bob, are you really going to bring up Scientology on Cruisemas?
Do Scientologists celebrate Cruisemas?
I hope they do. I thought you were going to ask if they have sex.
Well, that too. Who knows? Who knows?
Who's to say?
All right, man, let's talk about Tom Cruise. Like, I don't know what else to do here. The reason we save him for last is because obviously it's his movie. But Brad, I think the most obvious, like, I almost don't even want to bring it up, but the obvious thing about this movie is that it is a meta commentary on Tom Cruise himself, right? Yeah. Like, there is that scene with Ed Harris where he's like, what does he say as he walks out? He's like, you're about to be obsolete. We don't need your kind anymore. And Tom Cruise turns around and says, maybe so, sir, but not today. And I'm like,
not today.
I'm like, yeah, Cruisemas, baby. Like,
Cruisemas.
And it's a very obvious, I don't even want to call it a metaphor. It is an allusion to the fact that Tom Cruise is part of a dying breed, which is movie stars. We don't have movie stars anymore. Well, who else out there can open a movie like this and make it have the legs to make $1.5 billion at the box office? Leo DiCaprio is probably the youngest real mega wattage movie star that we have anymore. And he's like almost 50.
Really? There's nobody younger than him.
I mean, can you think of a person that can open a movie on the scale of a Leo? Like, just based on I want to go see the new blank movie with their name
Right.
insert. Like, there's just, like, stardom is measured differently than it used to be.
Yeah.
We used to just go see the new Denzel or the new Tom Hanks. And now it's like, oh, that movie looks cool because it's Spider-Man. And also Tom Holland is in it. And I like Tom Holland because he is Spider-Man.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have people like Robert Downey Jr. doing something like Doolittle.
Right. Yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, Tom Cruise knows that he is one of our last of a dying breed. And this movie is very much the story of how Tom Cruise saves cinema, in addition to being the story of how Maverick saves the day.
Yeah, I think he's also not just talking about like superstardom. I think he's also pointing out the use of manual mechanical filmmaking techniques rather than CGI, and how that is a dying breed among filmmakers, that there's just not as much use of practical effects, that there's this massive reliance on, computer generated images. And for him, that's not what a movie is. And so for me, when I heard Ed Harris deliver that line, I took it to be more about the craft and the art of filmmaking, more so than just, I'm Tom Cruise, I am a superstar. Although I know it's about that as well.
All right, I want to close out today. Before we give final scores, I don't think we need to make it a double today. It's pretty obvious double. Watch Top Gun and then watch Top Gun Maverick. Does Tom Cruise deserve an Oscar for this movie? And I say that because I think the real question is, like, does he deserve to be nominated? Because everything I'm seeing right now is like, he was a shoo-in to be nominated, and now at the end of the year, he's like teetering on the edge of whether he'll be nominated. I think it's 100% yes, he should be nominated. But I want to go back to that argument we've had for so long about, if we really want to respect the ego stroking that is method acting, what is more method than flying a fucking plane? Like, this man is diving off of cliffs and parachuting down mountains and flying planes for your enjoyment. And also, he's a really good actor. Like, what more do you need? And again, in a year like this, where we're still bouncing back from COVID and the movies are still not really all the way back to what they used to be, if we didn't have Top Gun Maverick this year would have been an absolute financial disaster for the movie industry.
Yeah.
Like, my man literally saved Christmas for the movie industry.
Yeah.
I just how do you not honor that?
I don't know, man. For me, I feel like this should be his Revenant. Like, I don't know how Tom Cruise doesn't have an Oscar. Like, some of his early films, I think, are some of his best acting. Some of the middle years of his career, I think he was really honing in on what it meant to be an action star. And at this point, I think he really kind of coalesces both of those things in one movie in Top Gun Maverick. And so, beyond the fact that this movie saved cinema for a year at least, and the amount of work and dedication he put into it, I think he just deserves it based on the body of work of his career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, like, we always seem to get pissed off when we talk about past Oscars and, the year that The Godfather 2 came out, they gave the Academy Award to a guy named Art Carney, who is a well-respected older actor and comedian. And it was basically like, this is your Lifetime Achievement Award, Art Carney. But then if you go through and look at the list of Best Actor nominees that year, it's like Pacino in Godfather Part 2 and Nicholson in Chinatown. Like, it was egregious in retrospect. And guess what? I don't care in this instance. Like, give Tom Cruise a freaking Oscar. I think Colin Farrell maybe gave the best performance all year, and I would love to see him win, but not really at the expense of Tom Cruise at this point. Like, my guy is going to end up killing himself doing some dumb stunt to try to win an Oscar. Like, please just give him an Oscar.
He'll get a posthumous one.
All right, man.
Oh, man.
What kind of a score are you giving Top Gun Maverick?
I will give it a 9.5 out of 10.
I'm giving it a 9.5 as well. Dude, it is as good as advertised, and then some.
Yes, 100%. I really want to give it a 10. It's not a perfect movie, but man, oh man, is it good.
I'm going to be real, though. I have not been able, So like we have a copy of it that you and I share that we can watch on our TVs. And I'm like, I tried to turn on the first 10 minutes of it and I'm like, this is not working for me on TV. Like I need to go back to the theater and see it. And that's that's part of the reason I went and saw it again while it's still out. I wonder how much this is going to suffer from the in-home experience as opposed to the theater experience. But like at the same time, I've seen it 3 times in the theater and I still think it's a 9.5. So like, what does that tell you?
Yeah. Yeah. This is an incredible movie, guys. Go watch it. Merry Cruisemas.
Merry Cruisemas. I can't wait to do this again next year.
Yeah, dude, we'll have to think about what movie we're going to put up there because this is a heck of a start to our annual tradition of celebrating Tom Cruisemas.
All right, we do want to say to all of you in Film and Whiskey Nation, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year. We'll see you again on Monday. We won't be gone long. But until then, I'm Bob Book.
I'm Brad G.
And we'll see you next time.